tonight's topic of dissection is slurs. What are they? Are they good for anything? Is there ever a context when they're okay? And associated questions. So, just off the bat, go through and do a series of introductions. If we start with yourself, Proud Communist.
Me?
Yep.
Okay. Hi, I'm Proud Communist. Follow me on Twitter at Addictions for You. I'm a musician with an opinion, basically. I'm a classical musician. I'm pretty much only on Twitter. I just started doing the streaming. I'm mostly kind of stroll Twitter, and I've been streaming myself practicing my instrument, piano, flute, things like that. I also I'm a complete hippie, as I've been told, and I have finally accepted today. So you people who are like revolution now, I'm like love now. Why not? Just to annoy people. That's just who I am. Next.
So Theo.
Me?
Yep.
Alright. I am Lil Mix Theo on Twitch, Twitter, and Instagram. Instagram is mostly just me posting shit like that I take when I'm outside. Twitter, I am very opinionated on. If you follow me on there, you're going to get lots of yelling. And on here, I talk about disability politics and LGBTQIA plus politics, as well as world events, because it's practically impossible to not talk, well, to ignore talking about those at this point. So, yeah, I'm also a single parent, queer, non-binary, and currently dealing with a little guy that doesn't want to go to bed. So if I disappear, that's where I've gone.
I hear you. My name is Andre. My Twitch channel is twitch.tv/Cormentine. I am a writer and a history student. And on my channel, we generally will do one of two things. Either go through works that I'm studying now, or right now we're putting together theory. So we're going through all of the books, all of the foundational literature, the speeches, the texts, etc., that we should be reading from socialists all over the world, and putting together an awesome little book club.
Nice.
Cool. And I'm Punk Sai, notorious shit poster, occasional philosopher. In sort of my own area of sort of study in the past has been philosophy and moral philosophy. And I have an interest in science and the philosophy around science and its implications for our understanding of the human condition.
Exciting.
So, as we've said, tonight's discussion is about slurs and what they are. Probably the best way to start this off is if we do a round of describing what we each feel a slur is. So, I guess kick it off to Cormentine with this one first.
I would say a slur is a word used towards others with the intent to demean, demoralize, or disparage. Slurs are generally, at least the way that we tend to think of them, are generally used by a dominant group in order to psychologically dominate, oftentimes brutalize, a subordinate group. Slurs obviously can be used towards the dominant group as well. I just don't really give a shit about that. But the whole point being that, I think for the purpose of discussion, slurs are basically like a shorthand for one group to demean and disparage another.
Just getting a complaint about everyone's volume being super low, which I can deal with on this end. Hopefully that's a little better for everyone out there. And does anyone else have anything to add to that description?
I personally think that a slur has to have a historical context as well of an oppressor using it to oppress another group. So it's still an insult is an insult, right? But a slur has that particular history that where it is used specifically to dehumanize, demoralize, and hurt a minority group. Without that factor, it can just be considered an insult. Still harmful, still hurtful, but it's not really a slur. You know what I mean? That's my opinion, at least.
I mean, I definitely agree with that to a point, but there's also, slurs that become slurs through constant use against a particular group. For instance, I mean, and obviously there has to be that power dynamic there. There has to be those with the ability to oppress and those who are oppressed, but there are words that change from being slurs to not, and words that change from not being slurs to being slurs because a dominant group appropriates them essentially. Like the use of the T word for transgender people would be an example of it being appropriated by a dominant group. It was an in-group term used to describe one another and then became a slur because took it on. And that's relatively recent, like within the last 50 years this happened. So there is history at this point, but words can very rapidly become slurs if that does happen, if it's taken from an in-group to an out-group insult.
I mean, the one sort of difference I would have in the definition of slur is that it's, broadly speaking, it's when you use a word that's used to describe one group of people to describe someone else with the intent of insulting them. So it's when you take someone else's identity and you use that identity as an insult. That's the sort of my sort of internal definition as I've sort of built it over the years. Of course.
Sort of like when people. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
I had a
go ahead.
question. Is it sort of like when people use someone's physical characteristics and background, things that you can't really change as an insult? Is that what kind of you're getting at?
Well, it certainly can include those things, but it's more generally a case of. Oh, and looks like we've had Theo drop out for a moment. It's more generally that it's someone else's. It's someone else's identity that's being taken and used as an insult. That's, to my mind, what makes something a slur as opposed to just an insult. And of course,
Okay.
that does change depending on the context. Of course, calling someone whitey doesn't have quite the same impact as other slurs that could be considered similar. But of course, it requires that history as well, and that's what, to my mind, gives it the separation between slurs which are technically slurs but not something we have to particularly be concerned about, and actual harmful slurs. And we've got a Theo back. Are you there, Theo?
Hi, Theo.
Well, looks like Theo's having some technical issues. And it seems like we essentially all agree on what a slur is.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't even really know that it's. I mean, to me, I don't know that it's that important to drill down into the what do you want to call it, like the etymological details or the ontological details of a slur, because we all know, like it's like that old definition of but you know what? When you hear it, I think in an, at a time like at a time when everybody seems to be competing for attention and competing to be the ones who are able to aggressively dictate to other groups um, how to conduct themselves within our social arrangement such that one group isn't oppressing another. You get some really weird shit coming out. Like when Andrew Cuomo was saying that, Fredo is a slur and it's like the Italian N word. You know, well, if it was, then why did you not feel comfortable saying the N word and saying Fredo out in full? So I think it's like there's actually a really uh, good book called that a friend recommended to me called On Bullshit, where you can there's sort of like two ways to create obfuscation in any sort of like if you want to call it like a public debate or conversation or discourse or whatever. But there are the people who lie. That is, they know the truth and they deliberately tell you something that is not the truth in order to direct you away from the truth. But even more pernicious than that is the bullshitter. That is somebody who doesn't really care about the truth one way or the other. They're just going to say something to you that'll just like sort of throw you off the scent. Like if the truth is convenient for them, then the truth works and we'll go with that. But if the truth is not convenient for them, then we'll go with that. And I think that this slur discussion is just like is riddled with bullshit from people that I don't think really care sort of one way or the other, as long as their position and their ability to dictate to other groups how to treat them is protected.
Hmm. Absolutely. Um, it's the discourse about what counts as a slur, especially in those sorts of cases with the Fredo thing, it is. Yeah, I mean, technically it fits that definition, but people using it or trying to claim it as a slur and certainly equivalent of the N word is ridiculous because it's trying to appropriate someone else's experience into their experience of that word, which I'm not entirely sure if Chris Como's past, but I don't think it's quite equivalent to what Black Americans have gone through over the century.
Hmm.
I
I always
mean, definitely not.
dislike when people. I always dislike when people compare their specific slur to the N word because there has never been anything like chattel slavery in the history of this world. So it's like you yeah, other groups have been oppressed and like slurs for Latinos and stuff. Like I get it, like those are really harmful and hurtful, but you can't compare it, especially with like if you just look at the historical context, you just cannot compare it. It's just it's frustrating to me. It's actually really frustrating to me. Like we can acknowledge that the slur for your particular minority group is harmful, hurtful, and painful because they are. But what's the point of comparing? You know what I mean? There's no point in comparing. A lot of people will be taken less seriously for comparing it, especially to the N word, than if they had just been honest and been like, "Yeah, this hurt my feelings. This made me feel this way, etc." You know what I mean? Like, but then again, some people don't know how to communicate that. They just think, "Oh, well, it's similar to this," even though it really isn't, and their mind's just thinking in a different kind of way. But I don't know, comparing slurs to each other doesn't do anything. Doesn't help. Doesn't make things worse. Or sometimes, depending on who's saying it. But yeah, such a like I guess a pet peeve of mine, in my opinion.
Well, you can also tell that people understand how slurs really work, not only by the comparison to the N word, like that's always like the axis
Hmm.
upon which every other slur orbits, but also that when new slurs are invented, all they do is just take a word and then append the N word to it. So if you're trying to make a very creative slur for somebody who's from a South Asian country, sand N word. Somebody who's from like from East Asia, rice N word. Like it's the playbook is not very thick. People are not very creative, but I think we understand how all this stuff works intrinsically because we don't have to go into a discussion or create analysis around how to create new slurs. They're just created. It's only when we're trying to unpack stuff and determine is it okay for you to actually use them that all of this like bullshit and obfuscation gets thrown in.
Mhm.
Definitely a fair point on that.
Well, that sort of flows into one of the talking points that I've got down here of is it ever okay to use a slur in any context? Is that ever something that is okay?
I mean, it depends. Are you part of the group that is the target of that slur? Is probably the first question. If you're not, then you probably shouldn't.
Yeah.
You know, unless it's unless it's a general purpose
Sorry.
slur for white people. Unless it's a general purpose slur for white people, in which case, have at it.
Yeah. But
I mean, there's one notable exception I can think of to that, and it's become a big thing in the LGBTQIA community, and that's the word queer. And there's this whole thing of, is it a slur? Isn't it a slur? And while, yes, it has historically been a slur, the fact is it's starting to move into the realm of acceptance. Like, it's not LGBTQIA plus studies, it's queer studies, it's queer theory. You know, the word queer is becoming accepted as a term for a community. And obviously, there are people in the community that aren't comfortable with it. And I would never use that word for that. But as a member of the community, I call myself queer. And because it is becoming accepted academically, it's now in that gray zone of is it, isn't it? And in a lot of cases, I think that is a term that's considered a slur, but it's okay to be used by part of the outgroup because of the academic aspects.
Well, yeah, I think.
The
I
only
mean, I'm
thing I
somebody who
fear.
identifies
I'm
as.
sorry.
Sorry, I'll let you go ahead.
No, so the only thing I fear about the academic setting of usage of slurs and stuff like that is like the historical. I don't know how to put this, but I always bring her up because she's amazing. But like, there's this lady called Joy DeGruy who talks about the history of language and science in regards to the dehumanization of slaves from Africa in our actual historical context. And I always get afraid of using terms like in general, like the N word or African, or even like other terms like Indonese, Indian, stuff like that, because of the way they touted racism as science in that historical context. And I always get scared. I'm not saying that you can't use it in an academic setting, but I'm always like, keeping my eye out for those people who are like race realists in a way, the same way the originators of a lot of racist science were. And it terrifies me. Like, it's kind of one of those things I have in the back of my head. Like, okay, they're using the word queer for LGBT studies, etc. Are they being true to the word? Are they being true to the community, or is it another one of those academic studies that prove these people are inferior? Stuff like that. The touted as science, therefore it must be real, and that kind of stuff terrifies me, because if we remember just what happens when you dehumanize someone to the point of science, they are inferior because science, etc., or because of this study or things like that. That kind of stuff terrifies me. Like, and so when anyone in an academic setting uses anything that involves a marginalized group, words, terms, I always, I give them that side eye, like, okay, let me double check what you're saying, because it's one of my, it terrifies me, basically.
I mean, myself with the idea of slurs, sort of one of the most sort of, and whether or not there's even any context, I think one of the most sort of interesting moral sort of questions is in cases where you're performing art. like there was the case of the white female invited onto stage with a rapper, and his song contains the N-word, and she sang the N-word while singing along with him on stage. That obviously a poor choice on her account, but at the same time, is that quite the same as someone famous saying it in private, describing a person? Which of those two cases of usage is more egregious?
Well, I don't even really know that it's even a, and this is not to disparage your question. I just don't think it's really a worthwhile question to ask, because the answer is they're both bad. It's not just saying it in front of people, but also saying it even in the closed group. That does have a socialized effect. Um, if you say it around other people, even if it's like part of your in group, it does reinforce notions about that subordinate group, and reinforces aspects and prejudices of the dominant group. And that's not just me talking out of my ass. There's like multiple studies that show this. Even things like racial humor, racialized humor, where the joke is somebody that's part of a subordinate group. It does have a market effect, and if you want, I can pull up some studies and through those with you. Um, and I guess I just like have to ask, why is it so hard? Like, okay, I will, even though I've been joking around in this conversation, I generally don't use slurs about white people. I try not to, at least. Occasionally I say things, and it's really just like, I don't know if you want to call it a pressure valve, or me just like using humor to blunt the situation. But I come from a line of people that who were bought and sold as cattle. Some of my ancestors escaped uh, enslavement and were able to form their own communities. Some lived under the yoke for a very long time. There's a history of subjugation, brutalization, and oppression. None of which, by the way, makes it okay. What I'm saying though is that that plays into our current social dynamics now. So there's no way that anybody, as a white person, understands the experience of what it is to be black, not in America or Canada, but really in the entire world. There is no place in the entire world where black people have had to fight for their God-given rights and didn't come through bloodshed and violence. Not a single one. So if the answer to that is, well, they're both bad words and it made me feel bad, well, I don't really give a shit if it made you feel bad. You, the way that we got to the point where we can have a conversation about you feeling bad is by people that are related to me, and people that were in my community, and people that look like me, shedding blood for us to be able to even have a conversation on terms that are still not equal now. So it's like, to me, I know a lot of people disagree with my position and think that that makes me a nationalist or whatever. But honestly, I don't factor white people's feelings one iota into anything that I say. None, like not one. I have my integrity and I have my principles, but none of that includes how white people feel about a thing.
Yeah.
It's an
I
Aiden,
mean,
interesting
obviously,
perspective.
you two go ahead.
if nobody minds, I'll go. Obviously not on the same level, not anywhere near the same level, because it's not related to race, but like, I really don't give a shit about abled feelings. Like, when it comes to disability, I don't give a fuck. I will say, oh shit, the ableds are at it again. When I'm, like you said, the pressure vent. When it just builds up and it builds up and it builds up, and it's just too damn much.
And
Like,
as an able-bodied person, like, if you say, "Oh shit, the ables are at it again," I'm not like, "Oh my god, I'm so wounded." Oh, you take it back immediately. My poor soul. Oh my god, this is
see,
devastating. I'll be
that's
able to
because you're
accomplish nothing for the next 24 hours unless you take it back. Like, the other thing is, they don't actually care. They don't really care. They're faking sincerity to try and make you feel bad for something that's completely
exactly,
justifiable. Yeah.
exactly, and it's the insincerity of that really does piss me off. But it kills me because, as somebody that's in a minority, all of us here get that you're supposed to care about the people who are stepping on your neck's feelings. And even when it comes to slurs, we're not supposed to say the slurs because then, oh, the people who don't get to use them are going to be sad that they can't use these words. Or, oh, well, it makes them uncomfortable when you use that word to describe yourself. Like, if I want to describe myself as a dyke because I'm a lesbian, I'm gonna. If I want to call myself a cripple because I'm disabled, I'm gonna. Like, that's my right. And honestly, I'm not comfortable with people outside of the groups that I'm a part of in that case using those words because I've faced them. I've had them hurled at me when, people were bullying me. I had them hurled at me in college when I got the hell beat out of me for being gay. It's not something I'm comfortable with anybody from the out group using. And I don't understand why more people don't get that these words are used when people are hurt. These words are used when people are attacked. Like the T word with trans women. Back at Stone, even that word was used to dehumanize them while they were being physically attacked. And that's a big component of it. Like, we have to understand that if there's pain there, we have to think about that. That makes sense. Thank you for letting me get that out.
No, you're here for a reason. You have an opinion, say something. Oh, Punk Sai, so
Mhm.
I got some messages from some people who are unable to come to the live stream, but they did want us, like, they were wondering if we could maybe talk about it. Um, I put James Grimswolf's question in our group chat if you wanted to look at it.
Yep. If you want to read it out.
So he asked, what are the feelings surrounding the word homie? I spelled it wrong in the chat, I just realized it. Homie, and its use by white people. Now, I personally never use the word homie because they just don't. Like, I don't think I've ever really heard it that much in the community either, so I really don't have an opinion on that word.
It's cringe to me. It's just big cringe to me.
Um,
It's no, and it sounds so disingenuous.
I'm so white that I've only ever used it ironically.
Okay.
And I mean, again, this is, you can see I am white as snow, but it comes across as appropriation of blackness to me. Like, that is a term that is used, at least where I live, it's used mostly by the black community. And it feels like that whole thing of, they're just, people are picking apart parts of blackness and using it because they want to look cool or, street, whatever the hell that means. And it makes me uncomfortable personally as hell when white people do that. And if I'm off
For
base,
me,
Andre, please come for me. I mean it, just
No,
please tell me. I don't want to be that person.
I mean, you're telling the truth, so there's nothing
Okay, I
for
didn't
you
want to
for.
overstep or anything.
Okay, so people really get very like antsy about talking about uh, historical, whether it's like appropriation or co-opting or even just like the general makeup of the social relationship with white people and how it is to relate to black people. I find that people get very like okay, the people that should actually care are the ones that are just like, I don't want to say the wrong thing. But the problem is when you do that, then all the people who don't really give a shit are the ones that just have like free reign in the conversation. So like, feel free. You didn't say anything wrong.
Okay. Thank you, man. I appreciate that.
No worries. Like I had a friend ask me about a situation where it was actually it was a personal situation that had to do with somebody that she was dating, and it was a black woman, and asked me some questions about it. So my friend is a white woman. She's asked me some questions about like how to handle a thing, and I gave her some advice. And she's like, "Oh, thank you so much. Like, that was a lot of emotional labor on your parts, and having to like open yourself up about your life and your community, your culture." I was like, "Could you just fucking stop? You're my friend, okay? I'm just trying to give you advice. All right, relax."
Well, what would you call that? That white guilt leaking out?
Yeah. It makes things really awkward. Just be normal. Damn.
No, regarding the use of the word homie, for me, I heard homes more often than homie because of I'm Latina, so I got with a bunch of cholos and like the whole people want to be like, "Hey, homes," instead of
Mm.
homies, which is kind of funny. And I never like for the longest time I feel so stupid saying this, but for a long time I never connected two words that they're actually one's just an accent, that they're the same thing. Or I've been told, and I was like, huh, I had no idea. So I have an opinion on that one, but like, I don't know. It was such a weird. It's like a weird spot. I feel like I'm in because I'm used to that word, and then when I hear the word homie, I only ever hear it either on TV or like people using it ironically, or in like music videos for hip hop. So I have. It's such a weird word to me. Like I can't find it cringe. I don't like it's so outside my like I
I
guess
think kind of depends. Like, I grew up in a neighborhood where, like, I grew up around like a whole lot of different kind of people. So in Rexdale, Ontario,
Mhm.
like you'll find everybody like from every corner of the earth. Like, I grew up with people that were their parents were from like Pakistan, from Portugal, from Colombia, from uh, I mean, there was a whole hell of a lot of people from India, but also from like Trinidad and so forth. And everyone just like Somalia. The parents are Chinese, Vietnamese, Laotian, etc. And everyone just sort of like made a bit of a goulash or a bouillabaisse or whatever of culture, and a lot of what floated to the top of it was just sort of like black and very primarily like Caribbean culture. So a lot of the language that people use, I mean, if you hear in today's context, a lot of people would call that appropriation, and that word actually makes me cringe, because it's just applied so broadly. But the thing is, like, that was just our shared cultural expression. Now, when you're like taking that culture and just styling and doing really weird shit with it, like say, what's her face, Lily Singh. She does some really weird shit with like Toronto hood culture that is incredibly cringe to me. But for your average person that like grew up in the neighborhood, like that was our shared language. We listened to the same music, we watched the same TV shows, etc. Like it's just normal. Like if I'm trying to think of like if I meet up with a friend that I've known for like 20 25 years or whatever, from like back in like grade school, and we're catching up, and he's like, "Yo, what's up, homie?" And they're not black. I'm like, "What's up?" Like, I wouldn't even cross my mind to think anything different of it. But I think it's when people discover it's actually two things, and black people are just as capable of this as anybody else. Is when they discover um, blackness and black culture in adulthood, and they're just trying so hard to fit themselves into it because they think it's cool or whatever. That's when it's cringe because you see the little inauthenticity start to leak out.
Yeah, it's
Huh.
kind of interesting that that sort of came up, and with your description of the mixture of cultures where with you growing up, because I grew up mostly in England, but moved to New Zealand at the end of my teens, and spent the last few years of high school in a school sort of on the border between a rich area and a poorer area, I suppose you'd say. That was very much a mix of everyone from across the entire city because it was more of a alternative school, and that sort of was very much a microcosm of New Zealand sort of Auckland culture, where you have all these sort of different influences coming through and mixing together and melding, um, and being the sort of person that tans with a 40-watt light bulb. It was sometimes interesting trying to navigate in those spaces, and yeah, I mean, like the only time I've ever sort of tried to say like the N word in a non-referential circumstance, like referring to it, would have been with sitting down watching a bunch of videos with some Maori and Islander mates that they had downloaded on LimeWire. That was Chris Rock comedy skits, and we'd been sitting there watching it for about half an hour or something, and I tried to say something and didn't even get halfway through the N word before just sort of like cringing at myself as I was saying it, because I had been in that environment, and I had been essentially acclimatizing with these people who, for them, it was a word that they use, and they use in the hip hop sense, I suppose, would be the best description of it, because that was a commercially available culture that they could identify with, being people of color, and there not being much commercial music at that time from Maori and Islander people. So yeah, that's a interesting sort of thing, that you do get these cultures mixing together, and occasionally you have those sorts of difficulties, like with me trying to say something and realizing, and to point out I was 17 at the time, so hadn't put a lot of thought into the ethics of using the word and so forth.
Mhm. For me, growing up where I grew up, in pretty much a Latino community, everyone was brown, everyone spoke some kind of amount of Spanish. Um, the culture, and when I went to high school, everyone used the N word. Everyone, like I mean, everyone except for like the teachers, maybe a couple of white kids who were like, scared to say anything. Um, like I don't know, it was like it was so interesting. I remember thinking in my head, like maybe 1 or 2 years after graduating high school, and it's like, why did Latinos think it was okay to do that? And we still do that. I see, especially on Twitter, and when I see my old high school friends, they still use it. One of my favorite one of my favorite ways a lot of people used to use the N word, they wouldn't use G's, they use Q's, and when they would type it out, like NITQ A, that's what they would use. It was
I've seen
such a
people do
weird
this.
trend. Yeah, it was
Yeah,
such a
well,
weird
there's
thing.
that. Oh, it is metastasized into something else entirely, and I get upset when I see black people doing this online now. Is that I wonder if this is even the proper venue to be talking about this, but like I notice is a type of extremely online black person that it's almost like they view the rest of black people from the vantage point of white people. Like they're trying to, I don't know, build like an escape raft to escape N-word dumb, and they'll actually like use like the N word with a hard ER towards other black people online, or they'll like to get around like the filters, because like Twitter will ban people for using that word even if it's towards another black person. If it's like the N word with a hard ER, they'll type it like KNEE-GUR, or basically like create some other like spelt out homophone, which like exactly what it is that they're trying to say, and it's it's infuriating to me, because at a time when like think about all the bullshit that we're dealing with right now. Like think about all of the shit that's happening in the world, all the dangers that are faced by our community. With the rise of fascism, the fact that that black people abroad are coming under further subjugation than they were during the Nixon and the Reagan administrations. Like, there's a need for us to reach out and find solidarity with other people, and there's like online like warfare between diasporic groups, and it actually infuriated me to the point where I said, you know what, that's it. I'm just gonna, like, I haven't signed into Twitter for like tomorrow it'll be a full week, and I'm gonna stay off probably until the summertime, unless it's to like, help a friend promote a thing or maybe an article that I wrote. But like engaging in conversation, I can't do it, because I find that like it's like the online spaces and the online social media spaces have gotten irony poisoned, and everyone is just like trying so hard to pretend that they don't care about things, and they don't care about other people's feelings, that they go out of their way deliberately to hurt other people, and it's not something that I can really like spend much time around.
Can't really blame you there.
Yeah.
Twitter is a bit of a hellscape.
Well, Twitch is a whole
Twitter is
other
a
kettle
mess.
of fish. I mean, because Twitch is so like heavily indexed or over indexed towards like extremely online white people that like trying to have like the most simple conversation, which but like out in the real world, if you go and you talk to somebody and you say, if you were to ask like just a regular everyday black person a question like, hey, so what do you think about like, uh is like the c word towards white people, is that a slur? They'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about? You know what I mean? Like these conversations wouldn't fly in the offline world, because I think people have like it's not extremely not online people have enough sense in their heads and are like emotionally intelligent enough to know that you don't have to like dissect every single issue uh in order for it to be valid. You can just pay attention to the social dynamics around you and figure out what's okay and what's not. um Knowing that like on your child's way to school, they could end up running afoul of a school resource officer or a police officer, or even somebody in like the school administration that has a bad day, decides to take it out on them, report them to the office, report them truant or something like that, that throws them down the gullet of the school to prison pipeline. Like that's just a fear. There's like dangers that people face on a day-to-day basis and anxieties that they have walking around in their heads with, that questions like these are just like, man, I already have enough fucking problems. You really think that I want to think about that? Like, get out of my face with that shit. But I think when in areas where people simply do not like the 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 normal vicissitudes of human contact, the normal frictions uh are so unbearable for them that it's impossible to fathom how much worse shit other people are going through. And centering those unique vicissitudes, like I don't know, you say something completely out of line and somebody calls you out on it, and then you get really upset and hurt about it, and then you cry online about it for weeks. Like stuff like that, I think like shows up on this platform in a way that it would never anywhere else in the world.
Oh, absolutely.
What a, I agree. Probably one of the most difficult things to do online is to stay humble. Like admit where you messed up, grow from it. And not even just because you messed up, but like people do not forgive on social media platforms. You don't. It, like the moment you mess up, you've been burned, you're dead, you're canceled, whatever. And there's no coming back from that for a lot of people. Like a lot of people, they just like, even if you were like 16 and you said it, and then now you're like 30 and then you mess up somewhere else that has nothing to do with what you did in the past, they're going to bring it up. They're going to try to cancel you for the same thing. it it's such a toxic environment that I find really annoying, because it doesn't help anybody. It doesn't bring progress. It's just a bunch of chismosas basically. They want drama. They want to do the Twitter war. That's what they're after. They're not after change or like actually holding people accountable. And I see that all the time on Twitter, and it really annoys me. It really annoys me, where people are like, "Oh, this person said this thing and is using this word in this way, and therefore they're trash, horrible human beings, and deserve to die." I'll go that far half the time, and it's sad to watch. Like, it's sad to watch people who are part of a marginalized group behave in this manner, because you'd think maybe they would know better, but at the end of the day, we are actually just human. You know what I mean? We're all human, therefore anyone can engage in toxic behavior, and plenty of people do, regardless of your
Oh,
skin
yeah.
tone. So it always annoys the crap out of me when people try to bring that up. People try to behave that way, and it's like, what? Mute, bye. Like,
Amen to
I've just
that.
given up. And no
Yeah,
one wants to
there's
have a
a reason.
discussion.
Oh yeah, no, there's a reason I don't get into discussions on Twitter, because I don't have the patience for it. I don't have the friggin' spoons for it. Like, I'll, I'll say something about, whatever's going on, or, if something super pisses me off about legislation or shit, yeah, I'll say something. But I'm not going to get into to a discussion about the finer points of certain things on there, because 240 characters isn't enough. Even if you thread, somebody's going to find something in that thread and take it right out of context and crucify you for it. And I mean, there are better ways to have conversations, like this. Or even, bringing somebody on your Twitch channel if there's something they really want to talk about, you can't do it in chat. There's better ways to have conversations than in the shooting gallery that is fucking Twitter. And don't even get me started on Facebook. Because
I would actually say,
Oh my God.
I would actually say that Facebook is a less toxic space than Twitter right now. I would actually even venture to say, and a friend of mine and I talked about this. YouTube comments are a less toxic space than Twitter.
yeah, they
There
really are,
was
and
a
that's scary as hell.
there was a
I
and
never
I
thought.
yeah, sorry.
No, I
I was
never
gonna
thought
say
I'd see the
that
day.
no, it's weird. Like a couple of things happened. And a friend of mine and I talked about this. We call this sincerity poisoning and irony poisoning. And it's like they're like the tidal forces that drive conversations on Twitter. So the thing is, like, on your average day, there will be, a conversation that's either driven by an item in the news or an item that's driven by a complete fucking sociopath saying something completely out of line on Twitter, and then people react to it, and then that's all the conversation that day becomes, is people reacting to shit. And then kind of like, what are the tidal forces that drive these conversations are the irony poisoned, that is people who like have like really like gnarly Twitter names that are basically just like the noun haver, or like, their names all like lowercase caps that don't really make a lot of sense. It's like some obscure podcast reference from some like, from some like indie leftist podcast from 2 years ago or whatever. Like, like nothing about them makes sense. They're not actually even really that funny. They like to tweet screen caps of drill quotes at people, and it's basically just like, you care about shit. Look at you. You're so ridiculous. You're so stupid. You care about things. And the thing is, like, they actually do care about things themselves, but their entire like online personality depends on casting image. They don't care about things. And on the other hand, you have like the sincerity poison people, who are the people that care about everything. And like any minor transgression you have in like your bad take on Star Wars, or you not liking some celebrity or whatever, it's just like, it's not just like a slight on them and their ego. It's like, it makes you a bad person, that you don't like this. Like, I saw, okay, for example, somebody did this with Little Women, saying like, there's men out there who haven't even been made aware that Little Women is out. They're not going to go see Little Women, even though it's like charting at the box office. It's like, what the fuck? I don't care about that movie. Why do I need to care about? If you want to go watch it, go watch it. Why do I have to care about it? I don't give a shit. You think I want to? First of all, the author of Little Women didn't even like the book. So if the author of the book doesn't like the book, why should I have to like the movie? Fuck is wrong with you? But then they make it a political thing, or like the Reylo stands from like Star Wars. John Boyega makes some off-color joke, and they're losing their fucking minds for days. They're still going through it right now. I'm just like, but that's the entirety of like what drives that online conversation. It's just people being like completely like, in the real world they would sound like complete lunatics, but in the online space they'll find enough other people that are as close to as being brain poisoned as they are, that will actually like back them up, and they think they have support, and then that's pretty much like what drives the thrust of the dialogue that particular day. So just to get back to the point here, and to take it back to what we're talking about in the first place, it's like, I think people generally know this stuff, but because like online spaces thrive on drama and thrive on an attention economy, then it is incumbent on people that benefit from that attention economy to say the most ridiculous, like, in the real world making no sense ass kind of thing, and then let everybody else react to it, and then it's just a cycle of reaction for days and days, if not weeks and months.
Went viral.
And
That's what
you're
people want to
completely
do, right?
right, man.
Yeah. I mean, you can't go viral on YouTube in the comment section. You can go viral on YouTube for making, some outlandish video, but in the comment section you can't. So I think like the comment section, started off as like a space to just like say really outrageous things, but it's only relegated to that particular video. So there's no way for it to really spread unless the video spreads. But if you're just watching if you're watching like, I don't know, um oh my gosh, Renegade Cut or something like that, right? Or if you're watching, what was that YouTube channel called? Something about the screenplay. Focus on the screenplay. Anyway, all this from the
Oh,
screenplay. If you're watching that, right, and it's like, hey, this is actually really cool, and this is a point of view I hadn't really considered. Like, you will actually say things in the comments that are probably going to be rather agreeable because it's a niche interest to you. It's not going to go like super viral no matter what you say. So it's strange. Like because of the nature of virality, people I think are incentivized to push things to their absolute extreme. But in spaces that you expect to be toxic, things have actually calmed down quite a bit.
Hmm, interesting. I
that's
don't know.
kind of a
For me,
relief,
Twitter
actually.
is yeah. Everyone I can agree that Twitter is very toxic and like in other places have decided to calm down for some reason. Probably I feel the most hilarious thing about Twitter and its toxicity is that politics became so mainstream on Twitter. Like people make public announcements and like legislate it baffles my mind, especially in the United States where like something happens politically or legislation wise and the first people who are going to hear about it are people on Twitter. Like there's no addressing the people anymore type stuff, or if there is that stuff it's on Twitter, it's being live streamed. So it's insane to me, and it's kind of hilarious. And I talk to my parents about this all the time because they're in their 60s, my dad's going to be in his 70s soon, and I ask him, it's like, don't you think it's a little crazy that politicians announce legislation or do other political like talks on Twitter now? And of course my dad's just like, I can see his eyes like fade over, and he's like, I remember a simpler time. But it's just it's crazy.
Well, I kind of see Twitter as the pub bathroom wall of the modern age. It used to be that people would write their silly little comments on the wall of the toilet at the pub or club, and that's what graffiti. Like if you go back to Pompeii, there's those sorts of political graffiti all the way back there, and that's the same sort of thing that people are doing now, to my mind, anyway, with Twitter. It's just that the medium and the reach has changed, as opposed to the content
I mean,
in a lot of
definitely.
cases.
Say that it was
There's
the
like,
Tumblr refugees who were on Twitter.
yeah, no, honestly, having been on Tumblr and having seen the mind-numbingly galaxy brain takes on there,
Oh
there's a
my
lot of that
gosh.
on Twitter.
There were
Like
some
a
like
lot of that.
multiverse takes I've seen on that site, and the last time I actually like actively typed in the URL like tumblr.com might have been like 2016 or 17. It was a long time ago, and every so often people will send me like screen caps like I cannot believe a human mind came up with this. But it's like, and I think here's what the problem was with Tumblr that kind of like escaped out into the mainstream is that people like got their hands on academic theory. Like they might have like been doing some readings in class but didn't actually read the book. They just might have touched on it in a class and didn't do any further reading with it, didn't sit with it at all, but then did like stand culture with theory and then kind of like freestyled what it is that they think the theory means and then impose it on everybody else. And for some reason people on that site will go along with it, and then I think what happens in the Twitter space is they'll try to do that to other people, and people who are just like, a, like, I know about what the theory is, or b, I don't know what that is, but it sounds like complete bullshit to me. And like, just because you think that we should behave or arrange ourselves in a certain way doesn't mean I'm just gonna do it because you say so. Like, who are you? And I think that like the I don't know, like the clout that people were able to amass on Tumblr just doesn't really work in other spaces. and they don't really know how to take any other approach. But the thing that does benefit them, though, is the conflict that arises from people being like, "No, fuck you, I'm not doing that."
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, some of the same tactics are still used on Twitter that were present on Tumblr. You know, there's a cult of personality involved in this. A, I guess more groupthink than anything. You have to agree with a group, or else you're a horrible, terrible person. Like, even
Yeah.
within certain
Mm.
groups, if you don't agree, like, for instance, there's a whole conversation going on in the disability community about is stupid a slur? Is stupid not a slur? I don't know where I land personally, but like you see both sides just going at each other. There's no room for nuance, no room for, disagreement there of yes, it can be, yes, it can't be. There's certain instances when it is, there's certain instances when it's not. It's just you're either on one side or the other, and it scares the hell out of me. And I mean, shit like that does tear communities apart too. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, I still don't know where I land on that one either. Like, dumbass is just a part of my vocabulary, and I think that, like, when you say that someone's a dumbass, it has nothing to do with somebody being mute. It has to do with somebody, like, just
Being
knowing
a
better
dipshit.
and yeah, knowing better and just
Mm.
like choosing the absolute wrong option, and they know it's wrong but expecting no consequences, like that kind of stuff. Like, so I don't know. Like, I get that people will say, like, well, the origins are based in so and so, but it's also like, yeah, but people also say, call a spade a spade. It's like, where do you really want to go with that? Like, um I don't know. I try to stay away from it where I can, and it's definitely like not my ministry to tell disabled people what I will and won't listen to. At the same time, I've also seen really weird things happen. Like, people tried this for a minute. They tried to say that fuckboy is like a term that they would use in prison, and if you say fuckboy, it's a homophobic slur. And it was white people saying this, of course. And I was just
Oh
like,
yeah.
what the shit are you talking about? No, it's not. That's not what that means. And I'm going to continue to use the word. I don't know what made you think that I was like that. You heard the word, somebody warped it out of its original context and meaning. Somebody who I guarantee was either not black or was like a suburban black that doesn't actually really know much about black culture, but have, like, discovered it in their adulthood, and tried to, like, turn it into an academic thing. But you received this information second or possibly even third hand, and are then trying to repeat it back to me, an actual black person who knows what that word means, and then tell me that I need to censor myself on language that my people came up with. You need to get the fuck out of my face. Like, there's stuff like
I
that where I'm
mean,
just like, absolutely not.
the irony in it is the first people I saw really going on about it were white cis gay guys, and they're the ones that are most guilty for stealing from
Yeah.
every other fucking culture there is, especially like black women. They're so guilty of it, and they were the ones that I saw going hardest about this. Like, I don't know what the hell started it or what happened, but that was like the first big wave I saw of it. And then, of course, people who weren't paying attention whatsoever picked up on it and went, "Well, you can't use that. It's like it's horrible. It alludes to prison rape." And no, it
I think
refers. Sorry, that word I do try not to use, but no, dipshit. It refers to a certain type of person. Get over it.
yeah. Well, the other part is that, like, it also does itself can note a kind of slur when somebody warps it in that direction. That is, like, I don't know if the people who said that to you know what the origin of the word is and just chose to be you know uh bullshitters about it, or if they just heard it second or third hand. But there is an assumption of homophobia in black communities. Like, there's an assumption of black male toxicity in your towards homophobia that is itself a kind of slur. It's a pernicious trope. That's just not to say that homophobia doesn't exist in black communities. It absolutely does. The strange thing is, uh, black people's opinions, whether it's on gay marriage, whether it's on people of the LGBT community having equal rights, like being able to get access in public places, being able to have medical procedures, etc. Black people actually tend to be the leading indicators of progress. white people in
Mhm.
general are the lagging indicators. And there's there's Pew, there's the Public Research for Religion Institute. There's multiple polls of Black people's attitudes towards what are taken to be progressive beliefs or progressive ideals, and it's Black people and Latin American people that actually have the most progressive points of views. Wild thing, Black men actually, and depending on what the question is that's being asked, will have more progressive points of views than Black women will. Now, a lot of that has to do with religiosity, the participation in the church and so forth. So it's not to say that, like, as a matter of intrinsic nature, that Black men are more progressive. Like there are multiple social dynamics at work here, but to assume that if a word comes out of a Black person's mouth, there's got to be some sort of homophobic tendency behind it, and I'm positive, like, this is just something that they made up, right? They probably took what they think the original definition for the word punk means and then just like overlaid that on top of fuckboy, and then came up with 21st century punk, and thought that was going to stick. And I'm really glad it didn't, but it does to me show the tendency towards believing the worst tropes about Black people. And I have a very hard time listening to a non-Black person try to explain to me what a slur is or isn't, knowing that you think that we're savage and barbarous, but also very guilty of engaging in like lateral violence and brutality and ontological violence against people who are also marginalized and oppressed. But if you look at polls in general, you'll find that we are actually the most progressive group of people. And depending on what the question is being asked, it's usually us neck and neck with Latin American people.
And
Mhm.
one thing I will say on
I
that point as well is that there is a difference between sort of linguistically accepting and progressively linguistic, and actually being progressive, like believing that, yeah, sure, they've got the rights to do that, but still using slurs that because that's the language that the person grew up with. There is very much a difference between those two sort of sides of.
I find that fairly interesting that the Latino group is considered mostly progressive as well. But I think that might also come in fact with that I come where I live currently. The majority of people of Latinos that I'm surrounded with are very conservative, um, cradle Catholic, the whole works. Very conservative community. To the point where I can't even have a political discussion with any of them before they explode. Um, so it like I always have to remind myself, because I do live in this kind of community, that not everyone's like, when I think of Latinos, I think of probably gonna be conservative. Like that's just the first thing that pops into my mind because of the people I grew up around and the people and stuff like that. But it's those same people who are conservative who use Latino slurs against themselves. Like my father, he's so bad. He'll be like, "Hey, you Mexican," and he'll say it like that, even though he can speak proper Spanish, he has proper pronunciation, and he'll use it on himself, on his friends, people like that. And I get so frustrated with him because, like, Dad, stop talking that way. Like, you're talking about yourself that way. Why are you putting yourself down? And he just laughs it off and he says, because I'm a mess. Oh my God. It's 100% cringe. But him and his friends,
I'm
they do
sorry
all
you
the
gotta go
time.
through that. I am so
I,
sorry you have to
I
go
like,
through that. That sounds awful.
Well, that's
you
But I
get
also.
to a
mean,
point where
like,
you just give up.
oh, I feel
Go
you
ahead.
there.
I mean,
Go ahead,
that's also
Ponce.
a defense mechanism as well, because when,
Mhm.
as a reaction to those slurs being used against you, using those slurs within a friendly and safe context about yourself and about your peers helps reduce that emotional reaction that they produce outside of those situations. So through an
I mean,
exposure,
yeah.
it can help you deal with them when they're used in their aggressive context.
Well,
I
yeah,
mean,
of
I'm
course.
gonna
It's
probably,
PTSD, honestly.
yeah.
I'm sorry, what were you saying?
And I mean, I was gonna say, I mean, I know I'm gonna get hell for this, but it's the first example that came to my mind. It's very similar to Fat Amy in Pitch Perfect, calling herself Fat Amy. And when somebody asks her, well, why do you call yourself that? She says, it's so you skinny bitches can't do it to me. Like, it's self defense, it's a coping mechanism, it's to take the power away from that word. And there is something to be said for that, absolutely. I mean, obviously, again, it is a very, if you yourself are that thing that's, that's considered a slur, that's your word to reclaim. You can't reclaim a word that isn't used against the group you belong to. But there is power in reclamation. Like, I make a lot of people uncomfortable because I call myself a cripple, but you know what? I use a cane, I use crutches. Today, my brain is only holding it together through the grace of caffeine and a nap, you know? And I don't care that I make other people uncomfortable. That's my way of taking the power out of that word. Because when I was a kid, it was used as an insult, it was used as a slur way more than it is now. And,
Mhm.
I have memories of saying, somebody in my family going, well, that little boy's crippled. Look at him. He has leg braces on. Oh, that poor thing. How hard life must be. Insulting and pitying right in the same breath. And I decided to take back that word for myself. And again, if somebody in that group doesn't want to be called that word, you should never, use that word, even if you're part of that group. That's just respect for somebody else because it is violence to them, even within the context of, intra-group dynamics. You have to take that into account too. Like, I can imagine some people, that are black don't like being called the N word. Some people that are trans don't like being called, any of the T words, but I do have trans friends who use those words with each other. And I know the N word is used, well, with a soft A, is used in the community, in the black community. So it all comes down to the individual too with that, even within your own community. And you've got to be careful to respect that.
For me, I was the same way for a really long time. Like, I would joke with my dad the same way he does. But I found myself going into the opposite direction. I think for me personally, when I finally came hand to hand with these racist terms being used in a racist way by white people. And like for my dad, whenever he talks about his experience in his skin and growing up, like for an example, one story that always pops up in my mind is when he was in high school, he would walk down the hallways and his classmates, they would whisper and they would say things like, "Oh, thank God I'm not that dark." You know what I mean? In Spanish, of course. And me, my dad, my brother, we're all very like we're a little bit on the darker side in comparison to my mom and my sister, especially in the Latino community. Like growing up in high school, my nicknames were things like Mocha, and some people would say other things. And the first comment would always be about how dark I was, and it was a really huge insecurity for a really long time. And even now, I still fight with it. Like I'm finally coming to like terms with it and like laughing about it. But being like colorism, I forgot the term. It's colorism in the community, where the dark you are, the more jokingly people treat you. You're not taken as seriously, or just plain ugly to you. And it just kind of hurt. But when I was younger, I would use it ironically. I would use these terms like, "Oh, ha ha ha, Mocha this," or "Oh, she's real dark," or whatever, and I would laugh about it ironically. But then as I got older, I just couldn't do it anymore. I just couldn't do it anymore, especially one time I tried to get a factory job, and I have to admit I do have the privilege of being a citizen in the United States and having some financial stability with my family to not have to work at a factory job. But when I went to work at a factory job, I heard the manager say, "We're gonna work these morenas 16 hours for a week." And that was my training. The way they said morena And this white lady didn't care, said it really ugly with the accent and everything. And I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. But there's so many people in that situation who don't have the privilege or the opportunity to leave. They're just there. They have to hustle. They have to work. I had the opportunity to be like, fuck this. I'm going home. Don't treat me this way. And then I went off to college. But other people aren't like that. And I mean, it breaks my heart, but I have to remind myself to stay humble. Like, hey, I need to speak up about this because they can't. You know what I mean? It's my
Oh yeah.
responsibility to say enough is enough. And especially when it comes to like slurs, and I get mad at my dad about it. Like, well, before I used to joke with him. I just can't do it anymore. I just can't do it anymore. And I've had so many experiences after I got out of high school where people would stare at me, look at me, and just recently I found out I was 50% Native American, and I mean, shocker. But but like growing up, I was taught that Native Americans in Mexico were extinct. And so we would be like, oh, Aztec this, and they would use all sorts of like ugly language towards it. Some in Spanish, some not in Spanish. So growing up and seeing people stare at me like even in the same town where I grew up, where it's majority Latino, and then you just go to the north side and there's a bunch of white people, they stare at you like a spectacle, like a toy, or like something they can buy almost. And I just couldn't I couldn't do it. Being called exotic for 2 years while living on the north side of my hometown, while my culture, my history, my family background has more claim to the land that these white people are hanging out on, was like I just couldn't do it anymore. And I was like, I gotta go. I gotta go. So for me, while I used to use it ironically and use it as a coping mechanism, slurs and reclaiming them, now I just can't do it anymore because I lived in an environment just long enough for me to be where like I don't want to hear any of it anymore.
Okay. Just gonna time out that person.
What did they say?
Nothing
They're
relevant.
whining.
It was a copy pasta trying to derail the conversation. So yeah,
Hold on.
something that came up with during that last period of discussion is the whole subject of whether words like idiot and so forth count as slurs or not. I mean, I'm definitely in the camp of they're not. At least they're not slurs in the sense that terribly matter. And just to sort of put my own context with me talking about this into perspective, I'm severely dyslexic. I had a reading age of a 6-year-old when I was 9, and then eventually got. Oh, and Theo's down for a little bit, but should hopefully be back. And had to go through special education programs and so forth to work on my reading. So I got called all sorts of words within those sorts of categories when I was younger. The things like the R word, and one word that I will say out loud, generally not used as a slur these days, is spastic, which was the old clinical term for people with cerebral palsy. Those are 2 words that were very common when I was a child as insults. But I got called out by my grandfather back in my, it was actually I think before I was a teenager about their use, because he was a social worker, and those are words that I haven't used, but words like idiot or moron and so forth, or even stupid, I think to a point it's actually ableist to call them slurs, because it is saying that people with those disabilities are what people mean when they use those words. Because most people don't actually mean, when they say stupid, they don't mean this is a person who has some sort of cognitive deficiency from some sort of medical condition. Generally what they're saying is that it's poorly thought out, or they haven't properly assessed the nature of what they're saying, as opposed to you've actually got a medical condition. So I don't know if anyone has sort of anything to say against that one.
In the Caribbean community, we have, we're very fond of the word idiot, right? And it's or don't cap, and it doesn't refer to a cognitive disability. It refers to somebody who just does not exercise their common sense, doesn't exercise the skills that God gave them, and chooses to just like come to the probably like the worst conclusion and actions possible, right? And it's like when you have to like spend so much time navigating society, you have to develop a certain level of emotional but also intellectual intelligence so as to like not get yourself caught up, because it's very easy to find yourself arrested. It's very easy to find yourself in a very bad social situation. Like, so we place a very high premium on exercising uh, the sense of the community around you and the sense that your parents have probably tried to instill in you. And when you deliberately fail to do that, like when you don't exercise the wits that you were either gifted with to begin with or granted through your education, and not just like school but also like your family community around you, then it's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? And I say all the time, shame is a powerful tool. um and I'm not against shaming people, but when it's used that way, it's not to. As a matter of fact, it's sort of like the anti slur against cognitive deficiency. It's like, no, you actually have faculties and addition, like you've been granted so much and you fail to utilize any of it. What is wrong with you?
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of similar to, like, I was raised in an Italian family, adopted and raised by one, and my grandmother would use the word stunat, and it has just about the same meaning. It's like, you know better than this. You are
Yeah.
so much better than this, and you still choose to act like a dipshit. Really? And it's the same thing. Like, there, I I do know that there are some people who feel it is a slur, and that's why I try to limit my usage of like the word stupid or idiot or anything like that. And it's as a courtesy to the people that do feel harmed by it. I don't personally see it as one, and I mean, I have severe ADHD that caused me to fuck up at school. I was called stupid. I was called idiot. I was also called lazy and a ton of other things. I don't personally see them as slurs, but I do try to not use them for this part because they do make other people uncomfortable. That's where I land on it at this point. But I don't see it, basically. And I do think there is a difference now today, the way they're used, rather than when they were medicalized terms. I mean, I think we can all agree the R word is still used as a slur against people who have developmental disabilities or Down syndrome or, you know, obvious autism or things like that. But like idiot, stupid, that kind of thing, they've become words that basically are do not, or like what your grandparents used, Andre, you know? It means
Mhm.
you know better than this, be better than this. So that's my 2 cents on
Yeah,
that too.
I don't know. And the thing is, like, I don't want to, I don't want to invalidate people when they're like, actually, no, like it does affect people when you say that. And so, all right, well, I don't have like, I'm not. There's a cultural attachment, yes, and like, if I'm around my family who, and I know how it is that they use it, like, and we have like people in our family that do have cognitive disabilities, are those words that we use towards? No, absolutely fucking not. So do we use the word around them? Yeah. And they know what we're
Yeah.
talking about.
Well, I mean, context is important in that case. It's a situation where it's understood that this is what this means, and it doesn't mean, anything against you. It's literally just this. So I think that does play a very big part in it.
Yeah. But I think also like there's a degree of that thing that I mentioned earlier, the sincerity poisoning, which like I said, like people like I wonder how much some people actually really care so much as like being able to get others to like pressing other people under your thumb is like, oh, it actually feels good to get people to do what I want them to do rather than the other way around all the time. You know what I mean? Like, do they actually have a genuine and deep, abiding passion about, uh, people using language in a certain way, or is it really that like you kind of enjoy the power of being able to tell people what to do? And that's something that I kind of wrestle with because on the one hand, I don't want to like invalidate people's feelings, but on the other hand, and like you come across so much of this online. On the other hand, there's just people that just get off on like playing the school marm, and I hate it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's definitely a lot of that going on.
And it's also, I think, in part that when people start to get a little bit of traction on an idea, like not using ableist slurs, that it's almost as if they want to include as many of them as possible because it helps push their perspective of disability rights and so forth. In talking about it and having people engage with that idea is something that is beneficial to their goal of increasing knowledge about the subject of disability. So there is I think, a degree of that in there as well, that it is a genuine attempt by them to push something that is beneficial overall. It's just not necessarily the right tactic always. And yeah, I think for myself, a lot of it comes down to tactics and how effective it is.
So for me, I had a question for everybody. How do we feel about the inevitable change of language over time, especially in regards to slurs? An example is the word gay. The way it used to mean happy and then turned into a slur claimed, and then it has that history. And then of course there are other words that are the same way. Um, it's inevitable that language is going to change over time. Slang, slurs, grammar, etc. It's going to happen, especially in English. Like there's no stopping it. We already have multiple dialects and across the world, etc. But like how do you knowing that it's an inevitability, especially with words like
I mean, I'm happy if the power's taken away from the word personally. I want to see that happen for a lot of the stuff that gets slung at me. I would rather have it have positive connotations than negative ones. And I mean, obviously, cripple's always going to be a hot button word because it became a slur for so long and was a term used by the Nazis, and that really tends to poison words. So I don't see that one becoming mainstream, but like other words, just let it happen. Take that power away. That way, that's not going to get used at somebody, in the next generation coming up that's going to face this shit.
Well, there's also an interesting phenomenon, especially around the ableist slurs, which has been called the euphemism merry-go-round, which is essentially, if you look at the going back to the beginning of the 20th century, the R word was strictly a medical term meaning an intellectual developmental. and it literally just meant a slowed growth. That was the only attachment to it. Then, of course, that was being used as a slur because of its medical context, in implying that someone is part of that identity group as an insult. But then they changed the medical term to forget what came after the R word. I believe it was disabled straight off. And then, of course,
I think it might have been handicapped.
Yes, handicapped was the next one along. And then that was being used as an insult. And it was although you change the word that's used to describe that group of people, it doesn't stop those words being used as insults, and it just means that the next word along that you replace it with is then going to start being used as that. And the end result of that particular one with intellectual ability was special, for special needs. When special needs was done, which was back in the 90s, by the time the 2000s came along, saying special in a insulting voice was used as an insult. So often when you try to just change the word, not the attitude, all you're doing is kicking the can down the road by 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I
Yeah, then
completely
people
understand that.
nowadays use the little bus. He goes on the little bus
The
as an
short
insult.
bus, yeah.
So it just keeps going down the road.
Oh, yeah, no, there definitely has to be an addressing of the systemic issues behind all of this and the attitudes toward people who deal with, whatever marginalization they're facing. Like, without that change, there's not going to be a change in, the attitude ultimately. We need to address all of that too. But the problem there comes with you're asking people to reckon with their complicity in a system that dehumanizes others. And that's going to cause a lot of discomfort. And that's why we keep stalling at that step. Able people don't want to admit that they're complicit in the oppression of disabled people. White people don't want to admit that they're complicit in the oppression of black people, people of color in general. It's just a lot of reckoning happening that people don't want to deal with because, but I'm a good person. I don't hold any racist beliefs. I don't use these slurs. I'm a good person. And there's that complete lack of awareness of you can be a good person, but you are still participating in a system that beats down people that are marginalized, and you have the privilege to change that, and you've chosen not to, which may be where that guilt's coming from.
Mm-hmm. White guilt is always frustrating for me. It just in general, like it's such a worthless emotion, you know? Like I used to have a friend who would constantly say like, "Why are you pointing out all these problems and offering no solutions?" Constantly say that to anyone who like, especially like on Twitter, when like a bunch of white people would be like, "Oh, it's bad to say this word," and like they would be like, "Oh, didn't you know it's racist?" Like kind of, I don't know, being dumb, and then like those people who are always like, "Oh, I'm not being racist. I didn't start slavery. It was my ancestors. Don't blame me for something I didn't do." You know what I mean? As if the debt of the father doesn't sometimes fall into the son, like that saying. And then they're freaking out. And does anyone remember when
Whenever people say that thing about like, well, I didn't enslave anybody, and when does the sins of my ancestors, when does that come to an end? To which I say, all right, so if the accumulated sins of your ancestors should not accrue to you, then I guess that means we no longer believe in inheritance. So like capital inheritance, i.e., if your parents leave you things, it should just like go to the state, because nobody should be able to accrue anything.
yeah, there you go. Does anyone remember that white guilt meme trended? I don't remember how long ago it was, but it was a bunch of like white people. They would plank and then say "I'm sorry" on like random things, kind of just being a dick about all sorts of things. And they did it during Black History Month.
No, thankfully I missed
I
that part.
missed this somehow. I am so glad I missed it. What the fuck?
I wonder if
But to
I
me, it's
can
just like
find
that's
it.
that's just to me that's just people that like have nothing else going on with their lives. So it's like, yeah, let me see how much I can like trigger and like piss off people with this thing that is like very clearly disrespectful, and they know exactly what reaction they're going to get out of it. So to be honest, like that kind of stuff, I don't really even try to pay any attention to, because the entire purpose is not to prove a point. The entire purpose is like trolling and to get the reaction.
Hmm.
I mean, it happens basically with any month honoring any group that isn't white cishet abled men, so it's definitely trolling in a lot of cases. You see it during Pride Month too. And I won't lie, it really makes me want to just reach through the internet and scream at somebody, but I keep that to myself because I don't want to give fuel to the fire on that.
Yeah, I kind of look like, are you talking about the straight pride thing that they tried to do last year?
Oh, every year. Every year. This
Oh,
happens like literally every year. And it's always the fucking alt-right motherfuckers that do this. Like they're behind all of this shit. Not just Pride Month, but everything. Well, why don't we have a this Pride Month? Why don't we have a that Pride Month? Because y'all suck.
Well, it's also like, you do have Oktoberfest, you do have St. Patrick's Day, like there are like pride days, for just about any culture that you come from. So I don't even know what that is all about. When I say things like, why don't we have like a White History Month? Well, I mean, every fucking month is White History Month. Who are you talking
Yeah.
about? But they don't say that because again, it's like, they don't say it because they care. They say it because they're trying to get a reaction. Like they don't really care.
Yeah. And they want to derail it and
which
make it
is
about themselves too.
which is why I feel extra bad to those poor, poor, poor white people who are genuinely like innocent and just 100% ignorant, and they hear it and they see it and they're like, "You're right, that is a valid question," and I'm like, "No, it's a trap. Don't do it."
See, that's where
They
using your
freak out.
privilege comes in, though. Like, that's why everybody who does have that privilege for whatever is involved needs to step in if they see that shit happening and be like, sweetie, no, honey, no, this
Well,
is not
the
something
question
you
I
want to
ask,
be part of.
the question I ask is, okay, so what is a white? Like,
Mm.
what is it? What is it? What is a white person? What does it mean to be? What does it mean to be a white person? What is white culture exactly?
Mhm.
And people like, I've never actually gotten the same answer from two people. The thing is, nobody really understands what whiteness is. Whiteness is not something that predated racism. Whiteness is an invention of racism. Like
Whiteness is
the
just a
concept, the psychological superstructure that encompasses what it is to be white is itself an invention of racism, and nobody can really say that. So they come up with these like really weird. Oh wait, am I still connected?
yep.
Yeah,
Yes,
you
I
are.
can hear you.
Okay, yeah. So they come up with these really weird sort of like explanations, but you know, there was no agreed upon like date at which we can say the white race was. We understood white to be a race. Race itself, like the categorization and taxonomization of human beings under phenotypic traits, is itself a product of scientific racism. So, if,
Boom.
as to the question is why should there be a White History Month? It's like because you would literally be celebrating racism. But I'm not a no, but like the actual creation of whiteness, it was itself an act of racism. So no.
Hmm.
I
Which
mean,
is always an interesting thing when. Oh, sorry, Punk Sai.
I was just going to say my view of it has always been that whiteness is just the absence of racialization. It's like if you're not othered as another race, then you're white. So it's whiteness
And
is
I mean, you do,
defined by who you exclude.
I
and
will
you do
never
see that in the
get over the
history of it.
I
Go
will
ahead,
never get
Con.
over the fact. I was gonna say I'll never get over the fact that, the skulls that were measured, and compared to create a taxonomy of races. I will never get over the fact that that which was used to create a categorization for the quote unquote Caucasian race was the skull of a uh, Georgian prostitute that that Carlos Linnaeus just happened to like. I was like, oh, this is a very beautiful skull. Where's she from? She from Georgia? Oh shit, the Caucasus Mountains. All right, we Caucasian. That's
That's beautiful, man. Oh my god, that's beautiful. But I mean, like, with the racialization thing, you see it though with like the Irish and the Italians. Like, again, using my family as the example, my grandparents' parents came over here. My grandparents were first generation immigrants. And they were like, well, we got called all these awful words, and I don't want to repeat them just in case they are TOS. I don't want to fuck
Oh,
around,
sorry.
but
I
there's
got the name wrong. I'm sorry. I said Carlos Linnaeus, who is also like a race realist scientist. It was actually Blumenbach. Sorry, I got that
okay.
one wrong. Sorry about that. Yeah.
No worries. But like, you saw Irish people and Italian people being considered not white until they adopted white supremacy and started creating the systems that directly oppressed other people. And then they became white and they became acceptable because they were a part of that in group now. In this case, the quote unquote majority in group. And that's how they gained the acceptance and the power they did. Because before that, Irish people were called Irish N-words because, oh, they have a big sloping forehead and big noses. And Italians were, called the N-word back then because they looked slightly different, but turns out they were able to become accepted because they were light-skinned enough and they participated in these systems.
Well, there's a reason they call Italians guineas as a slur.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple other ones that I got told never ever to say in my life, or my grandmother would smack me, and I kind of still fear her spirit, and I'm not trying to
But
piss her off from being
it's
on
funny though. It's funny that the slur is based on proximity to blackness.
Hmm.
So we're sort of circling right back to the beginning.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, truly, that's where a lot of the standards lie, and it's just baffling that nobody cares enough to look at these words and look at what comes from it and trace it back to where it starts.
Mhm.
I mean, literally the only, and not even the only exception, but an exception that I can think of is, Jewish people who look, for whatever it is, Jewish to people. And even then, they got called the N word as well, but also had really super offensive terms come up with for them and just for them that still persists to this day. Like, that's the rare exception to the rule. And again, they did get called that word, but their slurs became the norm for them rather than, sand N word or, like you said, rice N word or whatever. They're just the K slur or, other horrific terms that, no, just don't even want to think about it. Like, racism, wild, wild beast. And it's ridiculous. And the funny thing is, some Jewish people have enough proximity to whiteness that they could absolutely pass as white. But once it's known as that they're Jewish, they are, in the eyes of these people, not white, despite their skin. And I'm not denying they experience white privilege or anything like that. So please don't take it like that.
Considering being white or being considered white, one of the interesting experiences I've had growing up was whenever I had to do testing in school, and you also have to fill out your race and then your, I guess, cultural background. And I remember as a Latina woman, I would always have to put female, and then I would always have to put white. And then in the next category, I would have to clarify and say I'm Hispanic or Latino or whatever. And I remember always everyone would always be confused, like why do we have to put white? Like why? Because it was almost as if we didn't exist. like as a different race, because if you think about it, race is fictional, like literally it is. But at the same time, it was like kind of that slap in the face, like, yeah, you're white, but you're not actually white. Don't
Mhm.
don't ever mistake that you're actually white. And growing up like that, and then every year there was always someone who's like, "Hey, miss, what do we put here?" And then they would have to, tell the whole class why it's this way. And it was the weirdest experience for me. And I remember there are plenty of Latinos that are actually white in the how we understand that term. Um, but it's so superficial and just like it's so fake. It's so fake. And like that slap in the face that you get, because no matter I can write white on all my documents, on all my testing, but never ever in my entire life has anyone ever called me white. It will never happen. I
Mhm.
like I dare people to try. Like it will never happen. Like
I mean,
they'll say it, but they'll never believe it.
I'm looking at you, and you look like you season your food. So no.
I'm what?
I'm so offended. I'm gonna take a day to recover from that.
I didn't hear what you said.
I said I'm looking at you, and you look like you season your food. So no.
I'm seizing my food.
You look like
Season.
you season your food.
Oh, I was
Hey,
like, what? What
uh,
are you saying?
and just to defend people here, like curry is very popular in England, and
Curry isn't
Whoa,
white.
whoa! Stop it right now, Punk Size. Stop it, because you all did some wild shit to Curry that I
oh
cannot
yeah,
believe. I cannot believe you enacted all of that subjugation, those forced famines, the forced labor, the displanting of people from one country to like a bunch of other islands that they're not familiar with, and that's what you choose to do with people's curry. Y'all ought to be ashamed of yourselves. Indian people deserve reparations for what you fuckers did to curry.
hey,
Is what should happen.
I prefer the Indian
Every single
I
one of you
prefer
should
the
be
Indian
forced out of.
curries.
No,
I do
you
prefer
should all
the
be
Indian
forced to
curries.
sell your homes and bankroll the reinvention of curry by the people that actually introduced it to your asses. Fuck is wrong with you people in your curry? My
Hey,
God.
I fully agree with the English curries are terrible. Peas do not belong in
Oh
curry.
my god.
Oh no, your curry is cultural fucking violence.
Well, no, I actually prefer the Indian proper Indian curries.
I had I made the mistake of not asking and had chapati and dal. Oh my God. I thought I was gonna die that day.
Yeah.
Will I be canceled if I say I've never had curry or Indian food in my entire life?
No, because
No.
it can be hard to get. Like it's really a niche thing. Like
Well,
some
depending
areas
on where you
have it,
live.
some don't. Yeah, exactly. Like
In
I mean,
Toronto,
I've had
there is no lack of curry whatsoever. Like like I live here by Scarborough, which is like you'd have to go out of your way to not be able to find curry here. Like you trip and fall and land in like a plate of curry. There's like
I
curry
need to move
restaurants
there.
everywhere. Yeah, there's a lot of like South Asian, but also like West Indian culture. Like okay, example of this was I was in Alberta recently with my partner and our kids, and so her mom is Indian. We left our daughters with her mom while we went off to Banff for a day, and she sent us like some FaceTime videos, and it was my daughters eating dal and roti, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is I hadn't really like thought of it before, and I was like, yo, they're in the middle of Alberta eating dal. That's just like not something that you would be able to say 10 or 15 or 20 years ago, you know?
Oh yeah, no, definitely. Like the only I'll say this, I have had, shitty white people curry. And the only good curry I've ever had was my ex's boss was from India and he made us curry. like as a Christmas present because he knew that I liked samosas and all these different Indian foods. So he made us real curry. And I swear to God, I have never tasted anything that good in my life. I have not eaten another plate of curry since then. The only way I will is if we get an Indian place where I live, or if I somehow go somewhere that has decent Indian places run by people who came from India, because I'm not going to fuck around with anything else.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. I've never had Indian food before, but my sister is literally dating someone who grew up and knows how to cook Indian cuisine. He grew up there.
You
And
need
he
to visit him.
the whole works.
And
I
funny is,
told him, I was like, "You gotta feed me. You gotta feed me, fam." And he was like, "Okay, little sister." And I was like, "No, little sister, nada. You need to feed me now. Ven aquí, comida, por
anyone
favor." Like,
anyone that I've ever actually like introduced to West Indian food, it's amazing because they like absolutely love it, but if not used to like curries or spicy foods, it just absolutely fucking wrecks them. So it's just like they know like going into it that they're gonna have to spend like they gotta like cancel plans for the next day, but they'll do it anyway.
See, I would be a happy camper if I got food like that. Just, oh,
Yeah.
please. Please, people, feed me. All of you feed me the good food.
See, I go for the Indian hot vindaloo. So, like for me, it is a case of I want the chefs to be trying to kill me. That's how I describe it when I'm ordering it at a new Indian place. It's like, yeah, no, I want the actual Indian hot, please. Like not Westerner
white
trying to
people
pretend.
spicy.
Yeah. Usually takes a couple of goes at a restaurant before they'll actually go full tit on it for me order. But because they're like, oh yeah, of course, white boy wants it hot. It's like, no, I actually do want it hot. I want to be sweating.
Oh, yeah, no kidding. That, honestly, best food right there. If I am not sweating when I leave a place and they say they have spicy food, I am unhappy and would like at least another go at it, please.
Well,
Excuse me.
that
ooh,
all
that
being said,
derailer is back. Did you want to time him out again? While he's looking at the
I was gonna
derailer,
say
people were
I
talking
should
about
probably
how there's more Mexican food in Canada.
yeah, we really need more Mexican. Who said we need more Mexican food in Canada?
Probably
Lottie?
Rockatansky. Oh, Lottie. Hey, Lottie.
Oh, Lottie's in here. Oh,
Yeah,
damn, what's up, Lottie?
Lottie's in here.
Oh, how come Lottie's not in the discussion?
Well, we're
It's all good. I was I should have mentioned that I was actually like hanging out with Lottie in Alberta, and I'm devising a plan. I'm devising a scheme to get the family to Alberta when I am finished with my master's.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but I should probably go though because I still have like dad stuff around the house to do, and I do have to be up tomorrow morning to do like errands and whatnot. But it was really good talking to you.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
too.
you too.
thank you very much for joining
Yeah,
us.
just anytime that you chop it up like this, just give me a shout. I'm around. You know where to find me. Oh, okay. So I tuned into your channel. I tuned into your channel, and Lottie's yelling at me. I'm sorry.
What?
It's funny. There's always got to be like 3 to 4 times a week there's somebody yelling at me. So it was their turn this time. All right, but good to y'all, and love this conversation, and I'll talk to you soon.
Have a good one.
See you, man.
Bye.
Bye.
And then there were
I'm just
3.
saying. I'm just saying, if
Also,
you haven't had Mexican food, you need to travel down south and
no,
get cultured. I'm just saying.
I have. I have. We actually, weirdly enough, we have a lot of immigrants in our area, and we have this place called Ozzy and May's Hacienda, and I don't know why it's called Ozzy and May's because neither of the owners have that name. Like the names aren't there, but I think they thought it sounded cute, like Ozzy and Harriet or whatever. But I went there and I got the best frigging burrito I have ever had in my life. Salsa verde on top. It was like, I think it was just beef, and that was it. Just beef, tortilla, the salsa verde, and I don't know what kind of sauce was on there, but it was so good. I ate there like at least once a week for the 3 years they were open. Like, I was so sad when they closed. I cried. Not even gonna freaking front.
Aw.
Well, I mean, I got to know everybody there, and I got to, know the wait staff and the owners. And it was amazing food, and we are such a rinky-dink little friggin' town. So when we get good food in like that, like I immediately glomp onto it. Like, please give me more. Like now we have a place that makes Vietnamese food, and they have pho, and I am a happy
Pho's
camper,
great.
man. I can't get
I ate
enough of
pho
it.
for
Like,
2 years straight.
I don't blame you. I could eat it every day for 2 years straight, easy. And especially the sriracha they give you. Like, it's the good sriracha. And now I want to get it and it's closed. Damn it.
Like,
Also, I feel like I
Alongside,
somehow derailed this.
you have to come to the Americas and
Yes.
enjoy our foods.
there's only one way I'm
Enjoy the
stepping
melting pot of.
foot on American soil, and that's if I'm armed and the revolution has already started.
I mean, fair. Fair. A lot of us
Oh
feel
my
that way and we
god!
live here.
Yeah,
Well,
it's
maybe we'll come down there and just cook food for you and give you a taste of what it's like here.
well, once we've had
Even
the
if I
revolution in New Zealand,
dude.
I'll invite all you guys over. Come and join the
Aw,
collective
thank
over here.
The revolution. Oh my god. Some of us can't leave the United States, Punkside. That's not how that works.
Well, technically, at the moment,
I mean,
I can't leave New Zealand because I'm an immigrant here, and I'm not actually a citizen. I'm a permanent resident, and it's absolutely fine if I'm in the country, but to leave, I've got to get a visa and to be able to get back in without any problem.
that just sounds backwards as hell. I mean, I'm sure that's probably the way it is here too, God knows, but
Yeah, it's just, and I mean, I've essentially got full rights, the same as a citizen. The only difference is that to get my citizenship, I have to pay like $500 and do the little test thing that they've got and say the oath. But apart from that, I'm exactly the same standing as anyone else. I can even vote in the elections and so forth. It's just if I leave,
Oh,
I've
wow.
got to sort out a visa beforehand so I can get back in.
He's an immigrant who can vote in elections. Must be nice.
Oh yeah.
Sorry.
no, that was a fair shot at the government here. Just totally understandable.
Oh my god, it's crazy. When I hear and learn about immigration laws in other countries, I just sometimes I give up, other times I have hope. But like, oh my god, America's immigration laws are just horrible. Horrible, absolutely horrible. I had a friend who has been trying to become a US citizen for 25 years. Like, they've been going through the process for 25 years. And
Jesus.
I was like, oh my god. I mean, that's kind of normal. Like, I'll be honest, it sucks. It is kind of normal. And I remember my second year in college, we had a Canadian teacher come in, and he was glowing about how quickly he became a US citizen here in the United States. And he's like, yeah, it only took me a year to become a US citizen here in the United States. God, isn't it great to be white? While my friend, who's been trying to become a citizen for 25 years, and he said that to a room of brown people, look just like me. And I'm like, this teacher he just did that. He just said that. Like, he was laughing about it with his peers and friends, but then everyone else, they were kind of like, you just said that to a room full of Latino people.
You
What?
know, I'm a white person. I'm a white people, and I hate white people sometimes. I really do. Just flat out.
Yeah.
And I promise this isn't some white guilt thing. It's just a simple observation that we really do fucking suck at understanding shit sometimes. And the whole disclaimer of not all white people before somebody that's a troll in chat gets pissed off, because apparently we've got to do that now.
Lottie, you're
Sorry,
making me cry in chat. They said, if you have a lot of money, you can come and go as you please, unless you're brown. Then they suspect you of drug smuggling or money laundering. Don't forget about sexual exploitation. Man.
Lottie, I love you. Yes, all white people. This is why Lottie is amazing. Just flat out. She's cool as hell.
Well, one of my
Oh,
favorite.
dude snaps. I love it when some bruv talks racist shit to me thinking I'm racist like them. First question, bruv. Second question, not really a question, mood.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie, that is one fun thing about being around people who are racist, is when they think because you're white, you're cool with that. And they say some racist shit, and you look at them and go, excuse me? How is that funny? How is that okay? And they start to scramble. That you just see and their face goes just pale shit, all just the blood drains from it, and they're like, I didn't mean it. I was just making a joke. It was just a joke, man. Okay, but explain to me then how that joke was funny. It's so fucking beautiful watching them do that.
One of my
I
favorite
take joy in
things
it,
to
I'm not gonna lie.
one of my favorite things to do, because how white I am, and I've lived in New Zealand most of my life at this point. You'll get somebody occasionally, usually at a workplace during smoko, sort of turn to you and go, "Ah, oh, bloody immigrants," or something like that, coming in and taking our jobs. It's like putting on my thickest English accent I can. Yeah, bloody immigrants coming over here taking our jobs. And you watch the sort of cogs spinning in the back of their head as it's like, oh, wait, there's something there. It's like, look, just because I'm
Like, no,
not,
honestly,
just because I'm white doesn't mean I'm not an immigrant, mate.
it really is
Oh my
fun to do that to people. I won't lie. There is a special fucking joy in it. Just watching that, that dawning realization come over them, and there's that inner freak out. Even if they try to remain calm on the outside,
Mm.
you see the eyes just kind of widen just that little bit, like, oh, I have fucked up. I did not think this through.
Well, like someone said in the chat there, Dukes said that they only mean brown immigrants, and yes, that's what they mean. And often that's my next question. So, well, okay, so you're not meaning me. Who did you mean? What sort of immigrants did?
Ooh, calling them out.
Oh yeah.
Awkward.
I've done that to a boss at a workplace before.
Drag them.
I'm
Absolutely.
I'm the sort of
That's the real drama.
I'm the sort of person
Listen, I
who's
do that to my family constantly. They think just because I'm family, I'm going to sit there and shut the hell up. I don't think so. And it's really fun with family because they look and just, and you can tell they want to say something, but they know I'm the little bleeding heart lefty who doesn't abide by that stuff, and they just shut up. It's so nice. And then they don't
My
talk to me
favorite
sometimes, and that's even better.
my favorite thing to do is play Bo's videos like really loud from my laptop whenever my mom is around and whenever he's talking shit about Trump. Because my mom's like an avid Trump supporter, even though, she's brown like I am. And, and so whenever Bo comes out with anything that's like he's an idiot, Bo. I raise the volume, walk to where my mother is, I just let it play. And she just stands there quiet silence because she can't say nothing because she knows basically that she fucked up. And then also Bo's like a white man with his accent and the whole work, so it's like the confusion because it's like he's supposed to be conservative, right? So
I love
but
showing
it's
Bo's
funny.
video of A Tale of Two Neighborhoods, where he's talking about taking supplies down for hurricane relief, and the difference between the white neighborhood and the black neighborhood. And for anyone who hasn't seen it in a chat, that basically talking about how the gangbangers had all of the diaper sizes for all of the kids in the neighborhood and were able to give him that information and get all of the supplies that he brought down spread out amongst the community real quick. Whereas in the white neighborhood, he had some random guy come running out of a house with a gun screaming at him. And because of the language he uses, like the word gangbanger and so forth, that fits in with a lot of the way that certain types of white people see that environment and ties it in. But at the same time, it also puts off some leftist people because they hear that language and go and see his beard and his hat and are like, oh no. Which is kind of an interesting dynamic.
Another
there's a
interesting
lot to be
dynamic is
said.
how starstruck some lefties are of Bo. Like sometimes, like those moments where you invite him onto certain streams, and people like freak out. I'm like, oh yeah, he's famous.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, that was me with Quarantine tonight. Like, I'm like, oh. And I know you're chill. Like, we've been on panels before. I still get nervous because I do, like, admire you. You're cool as hell. Just awesome. And I love the whole, spread love now. Like, that's how I feel about things too. So it's like, but with Andre, it was like, oh shit, he's like, whoa, he's so, like, he's read so much. He knows so much more than I do, and I am just here, little me, trying to keep up.
He's a big time boy.
He is a big time boy, and he's amazing. But
But
like,
it's interesting. This is my first time meeting him or hearing about him, so like I feel slightly attacked right now that I don't know who this guy is.
I know of him because, oh god, I don't even know how. I think because he was involved with drama with Destiny and that whole thing when he was saying it's okay to say the N-word in private. I think that's how I found out about him. And like I started watching him and I'm just like, I will never be able to read this much theory in my life. Like, I can't absorb that. He is that's intimidating to me. Smart people, like, not even necessarily intellectually smart, but in this case, intellectually smart people intimidate the shit out of me because I do have ADHD and it's hard for me to learn. So it was mostly like, he probably has forgotten more than I'll ever know. Oh shit.
Oh, don't think that way.
I'm working on my self-confidence. I promise I am. It's just a long road.
Yep.
Oh, for sure, I agree. It took me so long to be where I am right now, in regards to self confidence and all sorts of stuff. Because we were talking about self confidence. Oh man, talk about in the toilet, flushed already in the sewer system. Like, oh my gosh, growing up dark like me in my community and like the colorism and stuff like that, like I just oh my god, it's crazy. I will never forget when someone told me I would never be beautiful because I was too dark. Like like literally the only difference between them and me is our skin tone. Same race, same culture, the whole works. And it's like, don't worry, Mika, you can always put on a foundation shade 1 or 2 shades lighter and then you'll be pretty again. And I'm like, thanks.
I don't know how you didn't slap the taste out of their mouth, but didn't.
Oh, don't worry. I beat the hell out of a lot of people in high school for saying shit like that.
I
Oh
mean,
my
I'm
god.
proud of you for that. I really am.
There was this one white girl who, like, she thought she could be cute, and she almost ran me over with her car because she thought that her boyfriend was cheating on her with me, but in reality, he was cheating on her with everyone else, just not me at the time. And I remember she was like, what did she say? She said something really nasty about me. And oh, she said my hair was nappy. And I was like, okay, like I'm confusion. Uh
No
I
kidding.
am the yeah, it was the weirdest thing. And she's like, you and your nappy ass hair trying to steal my man. And I'm like, girl, I don't even have to try to steal your man. Like this is my palm and this is him. Like like, are you sure about that? And I will never forget that girl. Like, oh, it was horrible. In the fights I got into because of her, it was terrible. But you
Well,
know,
I'm glad you came out
that's
of it
just kind of how
okay.
it was.
I mean, I'm really glad you came out
Mm,
of it okay, because you're an awesome
oh,
person. Well, I mean, you
thank
came,
you.
I mean it. You really are an awesome person. You're always so just nice in every chat I see you in, so I appreciate you.
I wish you had met me like 5 years ago. No one would ever call me nice. A lot of people used to be scared of me. I remember there was this one person who came up to me at the end of my senior year in high school.
Oop,
Oh no.
we lose the Theo.
Boo. Boo. Come back. Baby, come back.
Oh. Hopefully Theo will be back.
Yeah. I forgot where I was. I got distracted.
Talking about fighting
She's
people.
back.
People being scared of you.
Oh, there was this one person who
I'm back.
I grew up with them. Okay. I grew up with them and we from 6th grade all the way to 12th grade. And I always thought they were cool and I wanted to hang out with them, but they would always avoid me. And I was like, fuck them, I guess. You know, just whatever. I was all sad about it. And then senior year, they came up to me because by the time I was a senior, I was already like a lot. I wasn't as angry anymore. And they told me, I was like, oh, I always thought you were cool. You seem like a nice person, this and that. You're really loyal with your friends. But I was terrified of you. And I like it was at that realization that I had to kind of start reevaluating my behavior. Like I was already changing at that moment, but not because I was evaluating my behavior. And when that happened to me, I had to look back at my behavior and understand, wait a minute, maybe I'm being a lot uglier to people than I really intend to be. I mean, sometimes it's very much intentional, but but it kind of, it hit home finally because I lucked out on a really amazing friendship because I was so angry and hurt and, well, frankly traumatized from racial experiences and misogynistic experiences and me trying to figure out if I'm bisexual or not, etc., etc. And so it was a mess, a big old mess. So coming from that experience and realizing, oh well, I need to reevaluate myself, reevaluate the music I'm listening to, the people I'm hanging out with, the places I go online, my safe spaces, etc. like that. It, oh my god, went to therapy. It was a really long process coming to where I am now, where I don't get angry at literally everything. Whereas before, you you didn't have to do a lot for me to like slam your face into the ground. You know, it was pretty bad. It was pretty bad. But now I'm like, oh hi, give people hearts. I have a pink teddy bear.
By the way,
Oh
I was
man.
not smiling at you during that story. Freyzo was being adorable and making me smile like a fool, so totally Freyzo's fault, not yours. But like,
Besso, where's the cuteness? I want to know. Oh, he's
but like,
your smile is precious. I agree.
and that's
Um,
why I ended up going, yeah, again, self-confidence issues that I am working through, but like, no, I do feel you on the whole anger thing, and I honest to God do think a lot of it, for a lot of us, comes from trauma we went through. Like, I was teased growing up for being fat. I was teased growing up for being gay, for being intelligent, which is okay. Um, when I came out as trans, for that, for I mean, I've gotten shit for being a single parent, but I'm grown now and it doesn't get to me, but like I went through a lot of shit growing up and I turned into a very angry individual. Like I did beat one dude to hell and back because he called me a dyke and that just blackout pissed off. But other than that, it was just I would rage at people. Like literally just spitting mad, red in the face, seeing red, screaming at people and saying the most horrible things I could think of to piss them off and to hurt them because there was just that rage there and it wasn't healthy. And
mhm.
after I had my kid, I'm like, I need to get this under control, like now. And I did therapy. I got on meds. I still I journal my feelings out so I can get them out there, and my doctor's great and has given me, panic attack meds because that's what a lot of them came from. I would get panicked, and instead of flight, I'd go in fight mode. So I've got that toolkit now. But there is a lot of shit that comes from trauma that people don't realize, it's PTSD. Just because we've never been in war zones, it doesn't mean we don't have
You
that.
don't have
We
it.
don't. Exactly. Like we still have it. It's just not war induced. It's trauma induced. And that's a thing. And I don't think that gets
Yeah.
talked
You
about enough
don't
either.
you don't need to have a direct trauma in order to gain PTSD from it. It can be direct or indirect. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like if we use 9/11 as an example, there are people who heard about it can't go on airplanes. They need medication, stuff like that. Then there are people who watch the video recordings for fun. Do it
Hmm.
every year on 9/11. Maybe live stream it, whatever. No trauma. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Each individual is different when it comes to these things, and it doesn't things like rape, misogyny, like all sorts of racial assaults, things like that. Just because they're not in the war zone doesn't make them less of a form of causing PTSD. Yeah, a lot of
Yep.
people want to invalidate individuals who these forms of trauma and be like, oh, because it's not in a war zone, it's invalid, and you go home. It's like, I want to tear my hair out. Like, you go through all this stuff and then be told by a medical professional that because it's not by war, we can't do nothing about it. I dare you. Like,
Hmm.
you will not treat people the same.
Oh no.
And
And I mean,
it always pisses me off too because a lot of people who are apathetic cannot gain empathy until they are traumatized. You know what I
hmm
mean? Like, can you imagine waiting till the last second until you've gone too far, until you've been hurt in order to understand or even try to understand the pain of another human being? Yeah,
I mean,
those
I
people frustrate me.
I've always been too damn sensitive. Like, anytime anybody's feeling anything, it rubs off on me. I'm just like an emotion sponge. So people that don't feel anything toward anybody else until that happens to them baffle me. Like, I understand there are medical reasons for it with some people. It can be TBI or it can be, a personality disorder. And I feel for those people. But like the ones who are just average every day, I don't give a shit. I only care about me. I don't get them. Like, how can you? I don't know how to
People who are
explain why you
selfish.
should care about other people. That fucking meme.
It's
Also, I feel
definitely
like everybody else
100%
does.
frustrating. You
I feel like completely off subject, and it's probably my fault
Nope.
because I do that a lot.
I mean, this all
It's okay, we
ties
forgive
in with
you.
it. I mean, the use of slurs and trauma is very much connected, both in the sense that usage of slurs can cause trauma, and the result of trauma can be that people are more likely to use slurs because they're emotionally numbed to other people's feelings and so forth.
I mean, that is a fair point, and thank you for connecting that back. I do appreciate it.
Hey, drawing spurious connections is my wheelhouse. That's basically all philosophy is.
Oh my god.
I still don't know how anybody can understand philosophy. It is so foreign to me and so confusing to me, and just all my respect for you for being able to grasp it, because
Whenever I think of philosophy, all I can think about is that joke about Plato claiming that the man is like a featherless bipedal or whatever, and then like that what's his, I don't remember his name, but that
Diogenes.
shit poster, like,
Diogenes.
yeah, he
Diogenes.
just comes in, is like, behold the man.
Behold, a man. That never
That's enough
fails
culture
to
for
make
today.
me laugh. Right? Real culture hours up here.
Oh, my favorite is that, like, that became like such a meme in the past couple of years, and like people who you would have never guessed would make that joke are making that joke, and I'm just like, oh, they understand.
My favorite one to come off of that is when the Moana fandom got involved, and they would add on to
Oh
every time. It
no.
was just constantly, consider the coconut. And that just struck me. It's so funny because hairy and, tends to be warm because it's out in the sun all the time. So this hairy thing, consider the coconut. I'm sorry, that's just one of those corny things that is like, right, it's my thing. I love it. I'm a
It's
nerd,
just
like,
so
honest to
funny.
God. This is my whole
Let's be real, we are all nerds. We would not be
crew.
like, we're literally on a Twitch stream, literally talking about the uses of slurs and language. Like, if you are not a nerd at this point, then you're in
What the
denial.
hell are you doing here?
Exactly.
And I've just
At
chucked a
Frezzo,
meme up on
anyone
screen.
not a nerd here? Ooh, I want to see.
You found it! Ah! That's my favorite version!
Put it in chat. My video, the stream is frozen.
Yep, I can do that.
God. This made my night.
Is punk size hen the Thai meme terms of service? Is it? Linwoo? That's what Linwoo said.
There you go. It's in the chat.
Behold the man, the child screaming. It is
like,
beautiful.
Oh,
Diogenes has to be one of my favorite philosophers, full stop. And
just because he's a massive shit poster.
Oh, he's the original punk. Like, that's what his philosophy is basically
Literally.
punk. But my second favourite philosopher, a living guy called Daniel Dennett, I've literally commented on his Facebook before that he's my second favourite philosopher, and someone goes, "Oh, well, why isn't he your favourite?" And I said, "Well, if he pisses on one of his critics, then he will become my favourite." Because that was literally what.
Diogenes was an icon. Holy shit!
Yeah, that's what he's
He
one of the
truly
things he
was.
known for is literally
Oh
taking a
my
piss on
God.
his critics.
That is beautiful. Holy shit!
I have a really funny Diogenes meme that I'm gonna try and find for y'all. That is also a JoJo's Bizarre Adventure meme.
Oh Jesus! Is this a JoJo reference now? That's a fucking thing. I can't take it. Memes are becoming self-referential, and I can't take it.
It's beautiful, is what it is. It's like the
It
next
is.
tier.
Listen, I'll
It's
admit
the
I've
next
never
tier of
watched JoJo.
enlightenment.
I have never watched
There you go,
JoJo's
Punk
Bizarre
Sai.
Adventure, but I respect the hell out of the fandom. Not even gonna lie. And their memes are funny if I don't completely understand them. Alright, hold
Punk Sai,
on.
you're obligated. You're obligated to read it because you have the accent.
Okay.
Oh shit, I got timed out because I posted a link. Shit.
Damn, and you're on the stream.
Hold
I
on.
know.
I'll copy that to the
And
thing.
you got
Yeah, I'll let you
warned.
do it, Punk
Oof.
Sai.
Oof.
There we go. The bot didn't attack me.
Thank you, Punk.
That's a bit of a miracle, to be honest. Allow ass,
Oh.
yes.
Oh, not again! God damn it!
So I've got to open it in here. Go. Okay, couldn't open it up for me. If I open it on the Discord. Ah, that's why. Posted it, put it in twice. Thereupon, many statesmen and philosophers came to Alexander with their congratulations, and he expected that Diogenes of Sinops also, who was tarrying in Corinth, would do likewise. But since that philosopher took not the slightest notice of Alexander, and continued to enjoy his leisure in the suburban Phrynoian, Alexander went in person to see him, and he found him lying upon the sun. Diogenes raised himself up a little when he saw so many people coming towards him, fixed his eyes upon Alexander, and when that monarch addressed him with greetings, asked if he wanted anything, "Hinjaku, Hinjaku," Diogenes answered. "You think a human could ever fulfill the wishes of Dio-sama? Mudda, mudda, mudda." It is said that Alexander was so struck by his by this, he exclaimed, "Nani!"
Mura, mura, mura.
Nani?
Nani?
That just made my entire night. Oh my god.
Somebody clip that, please.
Please
Somebody
clip
clip.
it, please. Oh my god, if you don't clip that, I'm never gonna forgive
Maybe
you.
I can do
Oh my god.
And I have no
so
clue about
beautiful.
anime culture, so I have no idea what that meant.
Oh, I can't do it. My internet doesn't want to let me.
Listen, I don't know JoJo at all, but that was the funniest shit
Halcyon Foundation. Okay, I had to stop lurking after this one. Holy fuck. All the JoJo references bring me to the yard.
Nani?
Pachitra, Nani? Someone needs to link in the chat the specific like thing that's from.
Fuck.
Oh my
Oh my
god.
god. I'm actually crying over here.
Me too. Punk Sai, you have to get cultured. Stop being a boomer and get with the program.
Yeah,
I
I
only do Japanese.
I I just never got into anime. The closest I ever got was I tried watching the Dragon Ball Z, and it was basically just
See, that's where you fucked up.
yeah.
That's where you fucked up.
It was just a week of
No, I'm gonna get canceled. Don't cancel me.
yeah, but
No,
that's the
you're
thing.
right,
Dragon
you
Ball
should
Z
say
was
it.
just a week of one guy going, "I'm going to blow up the planet." And I'm going to stop you. No, I'm going to blow up the planet. No, I'm going to stop you. And there was it for a week, and it was like, why do people
No,
like this?
That is like half the series. That is like half
No,
the
what
series,
you need,
honest to God.
Punk Sai, what you need to do is you need to watch Dragon Ball Z Abridged. It's super
Right.
That is a
old,
good option.
but it's good and it's life. It's actually life. There's Dragon
Or-
Ball Z Abridged. There's 50% off. There's what is it? Hellsing Abridged. There's what's the other one called? Sword Art Online Abridged. Oh, it's everything.
Shorter one that's really good that you would probably enjoy is Cowboy Bebop. Like, it's a really, really good show. It's got good characters, and the message is also kind of fuck capitalism, it screws over everybody. Like, I love it. I really do. It's a good anime. And plus, it has one of the best outro songs I have ever heard in my life. So, but I'm biased. I admit that.
Oh, someone said
Gladly.
Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged as well, and I agree. Evangelion, you slacker.
You see, that was the thing. That
The opening is such a meme.
my
Akira.
my exposure to all that anime stuff was Dragon Ball Z and Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! And Beyblades back in
My
the
deepest
Okay.
condolences.
early
Yeah, same
2000s.
My
here, but-
deepest condolences.
If you only watch one anime, just one, Akira, I
Yeah.
promise you. Oh, sure, get the no, you get the fuck out. You know, the whole thing.
Yeah, sure.
All right, you know what? The whole thing with Inuyasha is this. This is the whole show. Inuyasha Kagome. Sit. That's it. That's the show.
Yeah, there you go. You're not missing out on anything.
Yeah, you really aren't. No,
I'll
seriously,
fight you
Akira.
all. Lottie, them's fighting words. That's Lottie right now. Them's fighting words.
I will put up my dukes and fight you. But no, like, frigging Akira is it is a masterpiece of an anime. It's kind of fucking weird, but it is amazing. There's a reason that like almost everybody has it on their list.
A really good cult classic that I also highly recommend is Millennium Actress. Not like it's such a beautiful film, and it like I cry every time I watch it, literally. And I highly recommend it. If you have everyone in the chat, if you haven't seen it, what's wrong with you? I'm kidding. It's a cult classic, so a lot of people haven't seen it. But it's 100% worth everything. The animation is beautiful. The plot line is just confusing enough to be perfection. So, that's what you gotta do. Lottie, please don't disown her. That's just rude.
Yeah, please don't.
Dude Snaps agreed with me. Yeah, Perfect Blue is pretty lit. But you only want to watch Perfect Blue if you have like a support system. I'm just saying.
I'm just joking, Lottie. Don't worry. I know you never would be like, get the fuck out because you don't like Inuyasha.
Inuyasha's really good. It's great, but
I will admit that I did like the animation. The animation really is pretty, and I
Death
also
Note,
like
anybody?
Cabot. Death Note, yes, very good series. Also, it's the ultimate. This is why, straight dudes with privilege suck. like honestly. And it also kind of makes commentary on the would-be serial killer fuckers that fawn over killers, and on fame culture and how power corrupts. It's a lot of good commentary squished into.
Misa is just a giant Ayn Rand call out. I'm just saying.
I mean, you're really not wrong. I mean, it's like Ayn Rand wanted to fuck capitalism, and Misa fits that bill, except it's not capitalism, but it is, sort
It's
of.
Kira. Oh, I'm sorry, Punk Sai. Welcome to not being a normie who doesn't watch anime.
Yeah.
Because now you have
Oh,
to.
Grave of the
You're
Fireflies.
not allowed.
I just have to say
No!
that the
I don't
weeb
want to cry again.
the weeb density on the left makes me wonder whether or not the right is right. Then again, the weeb density on that side is even higher.
Don't go to the dark side!
It's like weebs
The weeb
on every
density-
side.
Where's Irene? We need her in here too. Come on.
Hey,
I'm
at
sorry
least
to
the
call her
left
out like
side
that.
has the K-pop stands, alright? As long as we have the K-pop stands, I think we'll be okay. No, I'm kidding. I'm gonna
Listen.
get canceled. Oh my god. They're gonna come
Nobody is
after
gonna
me. I can
cancel
already
you.
see it.
Nobody's
I'm
gonna cancel
attacking.
you. If they
I'm
try, they
attacking
can
the
meet me.
K-pop stands.
Oh no.
K-pop stands scare me.
Okay, no, they really are scary though. Like they take
They're
over every
crazy.
hashtag. Every fucking hashtag ever. You will find K-pop stands with their fucking fan cams, and just please find another hobby. Dear God, we get it. Okay.
But they're so beautiful. They're so amazing and talented, as if they weren't cultivated from childhood, like a fucking
And as if,
product.
honestly, the burnout rate in K-pop is terrifying. The rates of self-harm and
Injury.
suicide are staggering. Like, and the women in K-pop are not allowed to get into relationships because they have to be available for the fans. Of all the ridiculous
too.
shit. Oh yeah, no, the men too.
There's sexual abuse in a lot of the K-pop world. Oh my god, there was a huge scandal. I think either one or no, it was like a couple years back where literally the representatives of the companies that hold the K-pop trainees, they would get basically prostituted out to whatever rich man was willing to pay, and they would be called sponsor lists, where you had all these men who are willing to fuck you basically and pay for your training, because these poor children, when they go into the K-pop as a trainee, the amount of debt they accumulate is insane. And then of course if they fail out, they still have to pay that debt. Like
Yep.
it's so horrible. I had to do like an entire case study on K-pop and like the behind the scenes and like the cultural technology and stuff like that. And like I went from being okay with K-pop to I hate this. I'm only ever gonna torrent it now. Like,
I don't blame you. I mean, it's horrifying. Even like any fame related career that you go into, acting, music, shit like that, it's exploitation.
whoops.
It is built on exploitation. That's what the basis is. Look at the fucking scandal we've had here in the United States with Me Too and Harvey fucking Weinstein. 80 women. 80
Oh
women
my
for that
god.
one man alone. And like that's a perfect
And that's
example of
only
the
the people who came
exploitation.
forward.
Exactly. And I mean,
Jeffrey
in my
Epstein as
Jeff
well. Like,
Epstein, whether he was killed or not, I don't care. I'm glad he's dead. There.
yeah, it's rough. It's rough. Just entertainment business in general. There's human trafficking issues, and then oh my god, there's a bee in my room.
Oh shit.
That scared the crap out of me. Hold on. I think I got it. I like hit it with my pillow. Ah! Oh my god.
You poor thing.
I'm trying to figure this out. Somebody help me. Wait.
Hairspray.
Oh my god, it's like twitching. No.
Oh my god.
I don't know what to do.
I mean, I can't say shit because bees terrify the hell out of me too, but this
Well,
is adorable in a
They
way.
hurt, alright?
it's
Oh,
funny
no,
you
they
say
do.
that. I was like, I'm not bad these days with them. I can let them land on me and stuff. But when I was a teenager, like I could go charging into a group of blokes who were twice my age and starting a fight. A
That was
bee
terrifying.
comes near me, and I would be like running away with my arms flailing in the air like a child screaming.
They're scary, alright?
Yeah. Well,
You saw me at my weakest moment. If anyone ever tells anyone else, I will find you.
I mean, like, I will say I try not to kill bees. I really do.
Yeah.
Because, the whole bee shortage thing. But if one decides to land on me and tries to sting me, it has to die because I have a mild allergy and it will hurt for days. So I love bees, but they need to stay the hell away from me.
I'm like mildly scarred because when I was like in 3rd grade, I got stung by a hornet in my hand here, and my hand, it swole. It was so bad that I could literally my hand. So you know how your hand normally just curves like this? My hand was swollen so badly that it was stuck like this, like just straight up. Like the finger, it was so bad. I
Oh,
could
you
barely even
poor
do
thing.
this. I couldn't move anything. I was a little baby, and it was hilarious because I had homework that I didn't do. I got stung because of I couldn't do my homework, and so my mom, she helped me do my homework for me. Like I still had to do
Aw.
problems. She just wrote it down, like the lovely mother that she is. And then, and then she wrote like on the side, like in a note, like my child got stung by a hornet, couldn't use her hands. I still wanted her to do her homework, so I wrote it for her, and I was like, I'm loved.
Okay, Artemis is officially the most metal person I know. She says, I once let like 12 bees land on me while I was wearing a flower in my hair and walked towards some creepy people as the fluffy bugs crawled across my face. Freaked them out so bad.
No, I could never do that. No, no way. I'm sorry. It's not happening. I will
Okay, you know what?
cry.
Dude is also right. Hornets and wasps can fuck right off.
mhm.
They're from Satan.
Did you? hmm Did you know that if there's like a bee or a fly in your car and you're on the highway and you just open the window and they go flying out, that the impact of the air instantly kills them?
No, I didn't, but that's good to know. I mean, I'm not gonna feel guilty about it. If they're in my car and they're distracting me from driving, it's their damn fault.
It's their own damn fault. Mid.
Yeah, I have to say my own phobia of bees and wasps came from being a child and getting stung in the hand, like you were saying. Like I had my favorite. I would have been about 4 or 5 at the time, and it was the summer holidays, and I was up with visiting my grandparents up in the north of England in middle of summer, and I had my favourite type of chocolate bar in my hand, and I saw this wasp, land on the back of my hand, and I was just fascinated by it. And just, I was watching it, and I remember watching its arse end rear up, and then just stick in, and I was like, what's it doing?
Ow!
As I felt it just going up my arm and across my chest, and I could just feel that because it literally got me in the vein, and it was just I could feel it going up the arm and across. Had a full on asthma
Oh my
attack
god,
because
I
of it.
think I would cry.
Oh, I
Wait,
was.
what happened?
Oh, Theo
Once I
dropped out for a
froze.
moment.
Did I freeze?
No, Theo dropped out for a moment, I think.
I'm the confusion.
Theo
What is
dropped
happening?
and
Did
they're back again.
I
Okay, you guys,
freeze?
I have to tell you to watch Utena so Artemis doesn't get me canceled. So yeah, watch Utena. There we go. Obligation fulfilled.
Did I freeze for a second?
Yeah, you froze for like a split second, but you're moving slowly
Okay.
now. Could it be the internet connection over there?
You got me. You got
Yeah.
me.
Well, actually, I think at this point it's probably a good point to end the stream and start
Okay.
looking for someone to raid into. Have we got any suggestions?
Yay! If Irene is still streaming, can we raid her?
Yep, I think
Yeah,
that's
either
probably
Irene or Mecca.
Irene Uwu.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
have to say Irene Uwu.
Irene.
Uwu
Yeah, let's go bug
Irene.
her. Because she's actually playing
Yay!
video games tonight.
Alright, follow
yeah,
everybody on the
definitely.
Twitters.
Yep.
Follow all of us.
If you
and we will love
do
you
watch
forever.
Utena, check for the trigger warnings beforehand because it gets kind of heavy in parts.
Yep.
So,
and
yeah.
don't forget to
Say Irene Uwu.
don't
Yes.
forget to follow everyone that's been on tonight.